in. Come on in. We see you out there. Thank you. Come on in. It's another episode of Sunday Funnies. Most of us are awake, it seems. It's mid-afternoon for Glenn, so
yep,
pretty close to it. What is it, about 1? It's about 2 over there?
Yeah, 1 minute past 2.
Yeah, okay. In the afternoon. So here it's early in the morning. Where Daphne is, it's early in the morning.
Yeah, early.
We're looking a little after 9 a.m. for us.
Yeah.
So. I got coffee. I actually ran out to McDonald's this morning and nabbed a cup just because I was tired of drinking my own stuff. So. And the wife's already up and out doing grocery shopping. So later on today, if you hear some creaking up above, that's her bringing the groceries home. So.
Yeah, I got to do that later too. So it's a full day for me today.
Yeah, when you're out, you might as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
We just had 2 people arrested for driving to a park 5 miles away for a walk.
Oh boy!
So,
really, you can't even be outside at all?
Seems like it. Yeah.
Wow.
There are lots of people outside up across the road where there's a park where I live, but I don't think the police are there yet.
Oh, brother!
How can they fine you for going for a walk?
You can't even move. That's insane. Yeah, that's something that ought to be over here. Sometimes we think that maybe they should be doing that, especially if you're around Washington. Wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That was all
holy crap. Yeah.
That was exciting.
But we're not here to talk about politics.
Exactly. Right.
We're here to talk about funny books.
We're here to talk about why comics.
Why comics, folks? Why comics? Come on in, everybody. Come on in. The chat is open, even though there's nobody there yet. What's keeping you? We're up this morning.
It's like JD was listening to a podcast the other day where they called comics the easiest medium, and I almost grabbed his phone and threw it across the room.
We'll talk about that up there. Which crazy uninformed website or podcast was that?
I don't know. It's like they say, "Oh, it's the easiest medium," and I'm like, "What planet are you on?"
When I was just starting to get back into this, when Varian was telling me there are these sites out there with podcasts and they're all talking comics, and I'm like, I like to talk comics. I was listening to a couple of idiots, and I do mean that sincerely by the full definition of the word, talking about how all the writers in the Golden Age were didn't know what they were doing, had no idea what story structure was, and on and I'm like, wow.
Right, yeah.
All because they didn't want to stretch out the storytelling to 1 of 6 and 5 of 6 or whatever the heck.
Right,
they were telling tight 8-page stories. They didn't know what they were doing. And they, no characterization, no drama, no blah blah. It's like, dude, you haven't read a whole lot of Golden Age comics, have you?
Right. I mean, it's like, but what's funny though is that it really is surprising how people really do get thrown off by that type of storytelling. Like, I guess people have gotten I don't know if this is a manga thing or not, but they've gotten so used to really decompressed storytelling. You read Lone Wolf and Cub and there's 13 pages of trees swaying in the wind. Yeah. So it's
I wonder if those people would accept ownership of the copyrights of those things, that were so badly done.
Right. Yeah. Oh, no. They're all talk. I mean, it's like, no. They wouldn't, they're usually people who it's all theory to them. So, they don't know how to do, the whole, those who don't know teach type of thing.
let me get to my bell here. Just that's what that is. So true. But there's also such a wide difference. You sit and you read Lone Wolf and Cub and you see where those places are put in there for dramatic effect.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're done incredibly well by a master sequential artist. Where nowadays it's all like, hey, let's have a whole issue where they sit around and talk.
Right. Yeah. I mean, because it's because GD also was telling me about a comic that he was reading. I guess it was an Italian comic that was translated, and he was saying that the entire thing was just kind of weird to him because it was literally just the lifespan of a relationship. Mm-hmm. And it's there was no running, jumping, skipping, climbing Mount Doom type of thing. It was just it's just a relationship. And even he found it weird because like, where's my running, jumping, skipping? So it's weird that people just say that it's like, oh, comics should be like one thing, or and it's like, no, that's the whole point of comics. It's everything. You can have everything in it.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
I wish somebody would tell that to Marvel and DC at the well, maybe not, because it's helping the alternative market growth.
Right, exactly. I mean,
sorry to sound so cynical, folks, this morning, but
they're creating the vacuum, aren't they, for people like us to jump in and take over? I think.
Right, exactly.
Great. It's great. And look at Diamond. Aren't they? They're going to go down if they go down, aren't they? So does that not create an opportunity for a distributor?
Well, Diamond is crippled. Well, yes, but Diamond has had such a headlock onto the direct market that it's literally castrated the market, and I mean that in the.
If they go down with the publishing side of Marvel and DC, that will create a vacuum for somebody to step in and do that.
I think it's already created. When DC pulled out of Diamond, I think that created that vacuum.
Right.
And if they can teach or train the retailers to start looking at other distributors, that's just going to widen this market out and make everybody a lot more money.
Right. Yeah. Because that's the thing. Yeah. Because it's like I remember when we had like 13 distributors, 20 distributors,
27 at a high point. Yeah.
So it's like, and now it's like retailers whine at the thought of having to deal with a second distributor. So it's like,
that's exactly right. But DC's going away from Diamond. I'm just going to stop DC.
Right. So it's like,
that means I have to work.
It's like, there's only so many Funko Pops you can sell in your store.
There's only so many magic cards people actually want.
Yeah.
So many Funko Pops. You can't sell all of the Funko Pops. Some of them are and it's getting strayer and strayer as time goes by. It's like,
right, yeah.
You really want that Funko Pop of the oddball Japanese boy band?
I know. They're getting really like weird with their licensing.
You were saying about why comics. I remember at school, people used to. There was only a couple of other kids who read the Marvel comics that I read, and people used to ask me why do you read those? And I say, well, they're enjoyable, they're well done, I like their artwork and all that kind of thing.
Right.
And they could understand that because they knew I was an artist and everything. And I just used to turn around and say, well, what are you reading? And they'd say that I don't read anything.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Because I went from comics. I said this before. My brother, I've got two older brothers, so I didn't have to spend a lot of money, because they used to buy them. It was great, and they'd bring home things like the Beano, with Dennis the Menace and things like that. Those sort of cartoony comics, and then Marvel comics came along. My brother brought a Marvel comic home, and because it was the depictions were sort of real people, weren't they, rather than just silly cartoons. I got into that, but that took me into books as well. Then I started reading books when I was 10, 11, proper Isaac Asimov books, proper books, real, not just, other stuff. But what I'm saying is that I think show kids comics because of the storytelling, the artwork, the visual thing, and then you can learn the words and all that kind of thing. And then hopefully carry on. But what people don't seem to understand is that it's adults who create them.
Yeah, really. Yeah.
So there's some kind of link there, obscure, you know what I mean? But everything's done by adults. So if you're writing children's books, I don't think there's many children writing children's books.
Yeah.
Not make them any less of a kind of a medium, because there's enough room for everything in the world, isn't there? You don't have to like it.
I mean, I'm kind of wondering also if there's like a difference between like European attitudes towards comics and American attitudes towards comics.
There's a huge
because like I've grown up reading comics forever, but my parents read them too, my grandparents read them too, and all my aunts and uncles read them too. Right. So reading comics in the United States was kind of normal, although it's like that's when I learned that there was a difference between the comics that I was reading and American mainstream comics. But it was never anything unusual that I had like my parents go, oh, that's not real reading. I mean, it was just reading.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know?
my parents never stopped me reading anything.
Yeah. But it's like, it just seems like that whole thing where it's like, well, that's not a real book, is more like an Americanism than anything else. But I'm not, I don't want to say it as an absolute, of course.
I don't think it is. I think the comics are more widely accepted in Europe than they are in Great Britain. I don't know why, but maybe it's that piece of water that separates us from the continent, you know, because, you know, like as we now know, we are not part of Europe. So, but I mentioned this on another show or with you guys, I can't remember, about Japanese. A friend of mine lived in Japan for 10 years, and he said he'd go to work on the subway, and there's no kids there. They're all at school, and there's businessmen. You can see there were sort of high-ranking businessmen, and they're reading manga.
Yeah.
Everybody, nobody was reading newspaper. They were all reading manga. So there's a different attitude.
Because it's like here, it's like to see a guy reading a comic on the subway is like, you know, it's like it's like such an anomaly that it's almost exciting to see. It's like, oh, what issue are you reading? What are you reading?
The thing is,
there's a desperate need for more of that. It's got to become more mainstream. That's
the thing with in America, or here in England, if you read a comic on the subway, we call it a tube on the subway. It's this little thin thing that you can easily fold up and put in your pocket. But these manga things are like essential comics. They're like 300 pages in them, so they are substantial. You can't hide away with it. You can't sort of sneak in the corner with it and just glance. You've got to hold this thing. And all these businessmen with all the briefcases have got these mangas under their arm, and they're reading another one, you know, that kind of thing. So as though they live in Japan, you know.
they're close. Some of them are close to phone books over there. You should.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, that's that kind of size. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that also goes to show you like how accessible they are.
Yeah, that's
you know, that it's like they have like all sorts of, you know, books and formats and everything. That although the thought of somebody taking an American comic and folding it up and putting it in their back pocket right now is kind of horrifying.
and that truly is a shame. That truly is, because comics need to get back to, there's a certain level of comics that need to get back to disposability again.
Right. Yeah.
And a certain level of comics that, you're right, they ought to be looked at as high art. But there should be that range. And there's that range over in Japan, over in Europe. I'm not exactly sure how they are over in Britain, but I'm pretty sure it's pretty close to it.
I don't know. I don't read them anyway, but there seems to be I go in Forbidden Planet, and there's the comic section is getting smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
All you see is Star Wars figures, and you know, Darth Vader in a box. And there's 500 of them standing there, you know, and he's got this one's got a blue suit and that one's got a red suit, you know. And it didn't work. That's the way I seem to think it's going. Well,
one of the coolest things I thought when I was back in the late 70s, early 80s, when I was collecting and finding and searching for 2000 AD, is that these things resembled in format closer to our National Enquirer than they did an actual comic book. Everything was newsprint. Just like one or two staples and tabloid size.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, good stuff in there, though.
Incredible stuff in there. Just unbelievable reading.
I couldn't believe how up to date Judge Dredd was, you know, in terms of what was going on the news, because I'd picked that up on, say, a Wednesday or something when it was published, and it would. And you're familiar with the buildings in Mega City, aren't you? Big tall buildings, and it would say,
blocks. Yeah,
there'd be somebody in the news on Monday night. There'd be some politician who disgraced himself, you know. I don't know the name. Let's call him Fred Smith. Fred Smith, this high politician, would be found with somebody on, you know, some girl on Monday. On Wednesday, when 2000 AD came out, in Judge Dredd, written down the side of the building would be Fred Smith block. Yeah, you know, so they must have put it in right at the last moment, and you get George Michael block and Paul McCartney block and things like that.
It's very possible that that's what they did. Because I'm sure 2000 AD were working at least a couple of months in advance just to know what was going to be in each issue.
Of course, yeah. Right. It must have been waiting until the last moment, because there's a guy over here. I think he's an activist. He's not so much now. He's about 75. And he's called Tariq Ali. I don't know if you've heard of him. Well, I always remember one. It had Tariq Ali. You know. Just stuff like that. But there was, apart from the story and what was going on, there was always something in the background that you should be paying attention to.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, that's because Mega City was jammed. Everything was on top of one another. Yeah. Plenty of space for political and satirical statements. Yeah,
yeah. But you know,
just like those old Mad magazines.
Yeah,
those old Mad magazine comics.
Yeah. Oh yeah, did someone was it you that posted that Mad magazine cover from 1973?
Yeah.
It had the White House and it had a sign out front said "out of order."
Yeah.
Some things just don't change.
No,
talk about evergreen, right? Yeah.
Well, I'm sitting here during my twilight time, pretty much before I go to bed. I've been watching the old Laugh-Ins. Rowan and Martin Laugh-Ins. Those are 50 years old, and all of the humor up there, when it's not, shall we say, current nowadays, it would be triggering as hell.
Raunchy.
It's incredibly topical. You sit there going, "Wow, 50 years. We really haven't changed that much."
No, for real.
You know, everybody hates the politics. They're picking on Spiro Agnew because of his name. They're calling him President Agnew, and they're doing all sorts of devotions to him. And they're talking about racism. They're talking about transgenderism. They're the pill that you have all. Well, there's more references to Vietnam than what you would hear today, because that's what was going on. But the humor is, like I said, when you're not sitting there going, "Wow, I can't believe they got away with that," because they certainly wouldn't do that today. It's incredibly topical. Yeah.
We have there's a series of TV shows, and they're showing these old programs. I don't know what you've seen, like Dad's Army and things like that. I don't know if you've seen that.
Mm-mm.
They're just satire, and they're from the 70s, and Benny Hill and things like that.
Oh yeah.
Oh, and Benny Hill over here is the Colonel.
Yeah. Hill, sure.
And Faulty Towers. Have you seen Faulty Towers?
Oh, some of it, yeah.
Well, you know the one with the Germans in doing when he does the goose step and all that.
Yeah.
That is now banned.
Yeah.
Because it's banned because we don't want to upset the Germans. But that episode,
the Germans, that's the one that started.
That episode has been voted the best one by people in Germany.
Well, there have been whole musical routines here in Laugh-In, and I'm surprised they kept them on available, where the entire cast comes out in blackface.
Oh boy!
Except for the black people who come out in whiteface.
Oh, that's funny.
and the wife and I are looking at each other, watching this, and we're like going, "Is this making you uncomfortable? Because it's making me uncomfortable just to sit here and look at this stuff."
Well,
it's like,
it doesn't make me uncomfortable. I just think it's great, because I can remember when I was 15 when that was on.
Yeah.
But what they do here, they have this program on. They have millennials on. You know, the people who are sort of 30 years old, and they're all going, because it's like they're going to die because somebody said something, and you think, oh, well, it's just how it was, and
right, yeah.
Don't do it now, but that's how it was.
Right. Yeah. I mean, language, it's like language changes, everything changes, culture changes, and everything changes along with it. And it's like why, yes, of course. It's like you think that a show that's like 50 years old, didn't, grow with the times. Oh my goodness. It's like
Spiro, psychedelic. Thanks for listening, Ken. Yeah. Monty Python, of course. Yeah. That's
Mel Brooks. I guess the American version would be Mel Brooks. I mean, his stuff was like absolutely insane.
Yeah. Nowadays it's all.
Yeah.
You can't sit through Blazing Saddles without at least going a half a dozen times going, wouldn't get away with that today. Wouldn't get away with that.
What's the one with the Germans in the Mel Brooks one? What's that one? With Springtime with Hitler.
The producers, yeah.
That was the producer.
That turned into a musical.
Producers, that's it. Yeah.
Well, that was intentionally done to be offensive, though. They tried to do a play where they knew they were going to lose money, and it turned out to be a massive hit.
Yeah,
that was the whole joke. Yeah,
I was more of a History of the World Part 2 type of person. I mean, it's like I know all the words to the Inquisition song, and even I'm like saying the words, and I'm like, oh my goodness.
Yeah. Marvy in the house. Randy, Daphne, Glenn, how are you today? Glad to see you. Glad to see you too, Marvy.
We're awake. I'm not as awake as I'm going to get.
Good afternoon to you. Yeah. Hogan's Heroes.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah.
I tried to explain to my daughter about Hogan's Heroes, who hadn't seen it. Thank goodness for Me TV nowadays, especially. But she's like, they did what? A sitcom where? And it was really funny.
Right. That's satire. It's like, I don't know. It's just weird that people don't know how to handle that right now. I mean,
History of the World Part 1. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, they don't know how to handle it now.
Yeah.
Yep. And there are comics like that as well. I mean, you'll have Sammy was running through Captain Marvel with C.C. Beck all the way through that 40s era, but that's because I won't say they didn't know any better, but they didn't feel they knew any better. That was just the accepted norm.
That's right.
That's where the humor relief came from. Little Chop running through Blackhawks. It's kept Blackhawks from being reprinted for years, and a lot of that artwork is just unbelievable by Reed Crandall.
One of the memories that I have, because I don't really talk about my time at School of Visual Arts very much, but one of the like very vivid memories I have is I had a class with Will Eisner, and there was this one time where I guess it's like he was showing off his books or whatnot. And all the Black students in that class ganged up on him, trying to make him explain what the deal was with the way he portrays Black characters in The Spirit. And it was just really weird because like I had no context for any of this, like, because I had Will Eisner's class, but I wasn't really familiar with him very much. I mean, I knew he was important, but I was just it was a weird time for me back then. So I'm sitting in the back of the class and I'm just watching this, not understanding the context, and it's like, what was really weird was like watching Will trying to explain how it's like that, that it's like, oh, but I was treating him with dignity and respect. But then at the same time, the guys were like going, how is drawing a Black person like this respectful? And it was just like, I don't remember what the outcome of it. I just remember, like the back and forth, and it was just like super. You couldn't get more awkward in that class. But
what was Will feeling about it? Do you think
he was kind of uptight about it? But at the same time, I didn't really blame the guys either, because it's like, it's like, oh, the only Black character in the book, and he looks like that, and we just want an answer for it.
Yeah,
I mean. And the funny thing is that Will kind of didn't have an answer for it. It's like he just kept saying, it's like, well, that's kind of how we did it back then, but I didn't mean it that way. And, he doesn't draw him like that anymore. And, it was.
At that point in that context.
Back then, yeah.
At that point, at that context, that's how a Black person was drawn.
Yeah.
Because that was always the accepted norm.
Right.
Comics have always come out of a set of exaggerations.
Right.
And unfortunately, that was one depiction that was incorrect and over exaggerated, which he did go, like you said, he did go through after that, or not after that, but he knew, as he learned, just like everybody else did, that wasn't acceptable, that was offensive.
Right.
You do that course correction, but in the meantime, there's all that body of work. But if you go back on that body of work and you look at how Ebony was written, Ebony was always written as a character. He was never written as slaps. Well, for some of the vernacular is of the time ghetto-ish, but the character was never demeaned. He was never picked on for skin color. He was never prejudiced against. In fact, he went out and was doing all sorts of different businesses. He was a private eye. He was a taxi driver. He was doing all sorts of different things. He wasn't disrespected because of his color. He was drawn in the context of the acceptable norm of the day. Right. Not that that's accepted remotely today.
Right.
If Eisner were to be doing that character today, Ebony would look completely different.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's like, and that was, I guess, what he was kind of getting at, but like, I mean, it's like, it was one of those things that kind of like, we weren't expecting it in class, but at the same time, these were the people who had the right to ask that. It's not like, it's a bunch of like little white 14-year-old girls on Twitter, demanding an answer.
Exactly.
The thing I don't understand at the moment in the current climate is why I suppose I've got to. I hope you understand what I mean by this. Why was it wrong? I know it's not. I don't know how to put it.
Back when it was done, it was not perceived as wrong.
That's what I'm saying.
Well, but you see, it wasn't perceived as wrong by the general white audience, though, because obviously these guys whose parents grew up with that, they kind of knew it was wrong because it was them. It was caricaturing.
They were, because that's why it's wrong today. Is because back then the populace started pointing and going, "That's not right. That's wrong."
Right,
but it's all about perception.
Yes.
Because I've read that somebody said somewhere that they thought that Stanley and Jack Kirby were racist. Well, they were Jews,
right?
And let's face it. I mean, the world is, but America really is a group of ethnics together, isn't it?
Yes. Right? Well, Mel Brooks gets
as well, but
Mel Brooks gets that accusation too. That it's like, if you watch his movies without the context of knowing about like Jewish culture and the environment of Jews in entertainment, it's like the jokes are going to come off a certain way, but once you know the context, you understand that what he's doing is satire. But I think that's what's the definition? I mean, there's this definition of satire saying that really good satire is actually indistinguishable from what it's satirizing. So, it's something like that. So, it's things like that really need a lot of context. And the problem is that nowadays people don't want that context. They're just looking at everything at face value, and it makes it difficult to engage with certain types of art if you're just going to say, "Oh, this is wrong," period. It's like, well, but there's a larger context to it. No, it's bad.
Well, it's the point of ignoring history anymore. Where there's some things that need to be seen and need to be out there just so that you can point at them and say that was not right.
Right. Yeah.
Like the set of the early detective comics that DC was going to print in a large hardbound volume with a slipcover, treated historically and looked at historically, that threw everybody at your 12 girls on Twitter, like you said, into a total outrage because of their depiction of Asian culture. Because a lot of the Asians back then were looked at as evil. They were the mad scientist. They were Ming the Merciless as a prime example of that kind of horrible stereotype, or typical stereotype really of the day. Nobody saw anything wrong with it. And in fact, during World War II, most of your evil guys were either Japanese or German anyway, because that's who we were fighting in the war.
Yeah.
But does that mean that you absolutely have to hide all of that material, keep it from coming out, or keeping somebody from printing it in a hardbound book that kids can't afford, that only the historians are going to buy, in order to put that into the proper context and to have a volume of it to show here's a group of work that was done during this period that was stereotypically incorrect. In order to keep people from sliding back and doing that kind of work again.
The people who are against this now, to me, are like the people that they're trying to stop. The freedom of speech and all this kind of thing, and everybody calls everybody Nazis if they vote for Donald Trump and all this kind of thing. But they're the ones who are stopping those people doing what they want to do. Do you understand what I mean? So they're the people that, I'm not saying that Nazis are good or anything like that, but we shouldn't forget they were there, because they certainly were. I mean, I think everybody should visit the Holocaust Museum in Washington. I don't know whether you guys have been there.
No,
but if you've got any doubts, go in there and I'll tell you. It's photographs, the film, it's absolutely incredible. You can't believe it. You can't believe it, but it's there. You can see it happening. They're filming things and all that, from then. The Germans were filming it. And there's photographs of what they were doing to everybody and all this. And you think, my God. But people are trying to say that the Holocaust didn't exist and things like that. And clearly it did, That's another Jewish conspiracy,
Yeah, and hiding history doesn't fix that,
And hiding history puts a Band-Aid over it.
Yeah.
and ignores it, and it literally it keeps people from learning those lessons that are important to be learned.
Yeah.
They say that, don't they? If you ignore history, you repeat it.
You're bound to repeat it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ken thinks
Repeat it
we're all
before
looking great today. Thank you. The chat's blowing up. That's why I'm jumping in. People today are too sensitive.
Yep.
So Wonder Woman 84 is a joke or disrespect towards the fans. Read comics and forget the movies. That's what I'm doing.
Right. Well, I mean, the funny thing is,
Wonder Woman 84 into this.
well, yeah, and probably something happening in the chat. But I mean, the funny thing, I've mentioned this before because I watched the first 20 minutes of Wonder Woman 84, and I certainly didn't make it any further than that. However, I mean, to give it a little credit, I know I mentioned this on another show that I think that Wonder Woman 84 is probably the most comic book movie you will ever see. So it's like just like this really crazy, like 70s exaggerated, like it's stuff that if it was drawn, if this was sequential art, it would fit right in, but somehow it looks really, really weird on film. So yeah, so it's like if you're actually into like really, really campy comic books, like the Batman 66, I think it is, and all that old stuff, you might actually like it. Like I said, it's the most comic book movie I've ever seen. Not a movie based on a comic book, but it's the most aesthetically comic book movie.
Why is it called Wonder Woman 84?
It takes place in 84.
1984, yeah.
Well, I haven't watched the first one yet.
Well, to put it in context, though, it takes place in the 1984 that someone who never lived through the 80s thinks the 80s is.
That's it, exactly. That's the best way to call it.
Yeah, because I'm watching it and I was like, you know what? I don't remember anything being that. I mean, it was the 80s, but I don't remember it being that crazy.
Well, if I watch Wonder Woman, I just watch Linda Carter. That'll do for me.
Well, yeah, there you go. So you're good to go.
It's very much
chauvinist.
Yeah, it's very much well.
I mean,
I don't know. Red-blooded American male here. I don't know what to tell you there. But I'll tell you, when Linda Carter did pop up on the show, I'm like, that's awesome. That was the best thing about the whole movie.
Yeah.
So, and I knew it when they showed the character. I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but they show a character in a helmet where you can't see their face, but you can see their eyes. I knew who that was right off the bat. I said, that is really cool. That was the high point of the movie for me. But that's, but other than that, I pretty much echo Daphne. Except I don't agree that it's somebody's really bad perception, and I would blame Patty Jenkins for this because she was the director over the whole thing of what a comic book was.
Right.
And that's a shame because there's so many.
I can give you that too. Yeah, I can see how that comes off too.
There's so many horrible plot holes in that movie.
Oh wow!
It really reminded me a lot of Rogue One, but that's a whole nother story.
Oh, that one is
literally
we're gonna fight.
That's a mess. Anyway. That movie was a bad idea of what a Star Wars movie they thought was maybe supposed to be, and I'm like,
we'll agree to disagree.
That was over. I'm like, there's 2 hours. I'm never gonna get. You'll see somebody'll sit down and do a proper dissection of that film. I know.
I'm sure someone has
I think it was somebody named Victor or something sat down and did a proper dissection of The Last Jedi, and it's like, yes, you're 100% right. That's it right there. And they'll do that eventually with Rogue One, and everybody will go, yeah.
I thought that about
had a lot of great points, but holy crap, plot holes you could drive a semi truck through.
Yeah, I thought that about Lord of the Rings. I thought there's 9 hours I'll never get back.
Oh no, I'm gonna have to fight both of you.
I told you before. I was a friend of mine brought the box set in, and on Friday, and he said, right, there's 3 films there. I want to report on Monday morning. So I sat down on Saturday and watched them back to back all the way through 9 hours. And I thought, I will never get that 9 hours back. What a load of rubbish. It could have been condensed into 2 hours.
But you were a huge fan of Tolkien too before you saw those movies, didn't you?
No, I've never read the books. I can't read the books. I don't.
Really?
I don't really like goblins and elves.
Uh-oh.
except for Daphne's books.
Oh, thank you.
I just like Daphne's artwork. I just like the artwork. The artwork is good. King Kong was on it over Christmas. You know, the Jack Black one.
Okay.
It's that guy, isn't it? It's that New Zealand guy, the director. What's he called? Peter Jackson.
Peter Jackson. Yeah.
He can't edit, can he? Everything's got to be 15 years long. You know, the trailer's 4 hours. You know, it's just too much.
Yeah, I thought the same way about The Hobbit, that it really should.
No. The Hobbit is completely different. That's a whole different animal from Lord of the Rings, because that movie, though, that trilogy, literally is a mess. Everything that really Glenn says that's wrong with Lord of the Rings is absolutely wrong with those Hobbit movies. Way too long, way too stretched out, way too much.
Two movies, and they should have let Guillermo do it. And
it could have been one movie and done one 3-hour movie done exceptionally.
All you have to do is watch the Rankin and Bass one. It's 45 minutes, and you're good to go. You get the whole thing.
The Rankin and Bass one, I have never been able to watch all the way through because it puts me to sleep.
No, it's the ballad.
The second half of The Hobbit, even the Basti first half, I went and saw it at the theater and had a rough time getting through it because it is just on, and we're doing this and we're going over there, and it's like, oh, okay.
Remember,
it's like Rise of Skywalker. Let's go find a MacGuffin. Okay.
I could never understand why those two guys who were going looking for that ring go walking with those trees, because they could walk faster than the trees. Those tree men that you can't hear what they're saying.
Well, it's kind of like the Eagles. Like, why didn't the Eagles just take them to Mordor? It's like, oh, the Eagles are not for taxi service.
All Gandalf had to do was call an owl or a hawk or whatever and take them right there. They're done. And then you wouldn't have a story.
The best thing about it was the scenery. And I read an interview with Peter Jackson, and it said he went all around the world trying to find the scenery, and then he found it in New Zealand. And then I read he was from New Zealand.
Yeah. Okay, everybody on the horse. We're going from left to right. Let's go.
Right, exactly.
Let's do it again. Yeah. Keep running.
Man.
This will be great. Oh, where was I here? Like,
I think we were talking about comics at one point.
Like Ghost World, the drawing chicken. It's been a lot. I've been meaning to get back to see Ghost World again and reread that book, because I remember it. I probably remember it differently than what it actually is. So interesting. Thanks, Randy. Randy Colors Holloway Adventures. Randy, thanks for listening. Ken R. Crum, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely, Randy.
So agreeing with you at something.
Gilbert Shelton, yes, exactly.
If we have many points, you might be agreeing.
Yeah. Oh, Randy says, I agree. As a black man and an artist, those trends were of the norm in mainstream, sometimes regardless of the color. Yeah. Equal opportunity offenders. Back then, a lot of times you see the Asian people always colored yellow and with long Fu Manchu mustaches and slant eyes and that kind of thing. It didn't stop. You know, Disney had the same issue.
Yeah, there was
still does. Yeah, sometimes. Yeah,
it depends on. Yeah,
it's Daphne. Yeah, Empyrean Vol. Thanks for listening. Good morning, Indie Volters. Good morning. Let me keep scrolling here. There's still a lot in the chat to cover. Ken says, reading National Lampoons in the late 70s, the best.
Oh, yeah, really.
Some of that is still very classic stuff and very, you don't see, a lot of that material anymore out there. You literally have to dig up the old magazines in order to experience it. Exactly. Glenn, Randy again says yes, and Brooks wasn't a bit racist at all. Well, he knew how to poke fun at people.
Well, and also he worked a lot with Richard Pryor. So,
Speaking of Richard Pryor, have you seen that show where he imitates a white man? Have you seen that? That's the funniest thing.
Which one? I think he did that.
Yeah, exactly.
He did that in Silver Streak, I believe. And where was that? No, where was it? That was
the Gene Wilder.
Him and Gene Wilder. Yeah. I know Gene Wilder imitated a black man. Very stereotypically horrible.
He was
shows.
Yeah. And again, never see that. Never see.
Right. Yeah. Like it was like some kind of like a collaboration satire type thing. So I mean,
it's just taking the mickey out of people, isn't it?
Yeah.
You should grow up and stop being offended at everything and just think the person's an idiot for saying it. You know, I mean, unless it's too, obviously racist. But when they just, I don't know. I'm showing my age and my attitude here.
Well, I mean, it's like, I mean, what's really funny is that, I guess like censorship is on people's consciousness right now without mentioning anything. Yeah. And, and I'm just sitting back and watching this, and it's like, you know what, as someone who draws like, it's like who draws porn on the internet, don't talk to me about censorship. Save that energy, when they come after people like me.
People can't say what they think anymore.
Yeah,
there's a yes Randy from Randy. Thanks, Randy. Yeah. Randy again, are there any challenging stereotypes now in mainstream comics? Yes, there are. We don't know some of them, we don't even know where they are, but they are. Because as we grow older as a society, and hopefully more educated, certain things are going to be pointed out as going, that's not right.
Right. Yeah. That's the type of thing that it's like, you don't recognize it at the time.
Yes.
Like we really need like a 10-year gap before we realize, oh, we used to do that. Like I guess like the most recent example would be like, I guess, making fun of mentally challenged people.
Yeah.
Now it's like 10 years ago, that was just like, now it's like, now it's like, hardly anybody uses the R word anymore. Like that's just how language changes to adjust to societal norms. I mean, so it's like, but at the time we didn't recognize that. I mean, although I'm pretty sure the people being made fun of recognized it, but society as a whole.
Nowadays, not to get too political or topical, but I think you're seeing a lot of nasty stereotype by people who jump to dogma. You voted for that person. Obviously, you are this, and this. The automatic labeling is stereotyping.
Yeah. Well, but the thing is that isn't that the definition of stereotype? You're just going for like the straight, common lowest denominator descriptor.
This is the pigeonhole you're in. Yes. Yep. Exactly. And it's still going on.
Right.
And people are still doing it because it's an easy out.
It's very.
It's so easy not to educate yourself and just make those assumptions.
Because you can't really believe that. Speaking as a white person, that black people and Chinese, Asian, I call Chinese Asians, to me. You can't say that they don't have their stereotypes about me.
Yeah, well,
that seems to be okay.
Yeah, because that also, because it's like being too self-aware could also lead to like the opposite effect where you're coddling, to a point where it's like now you're infantilizing certain people.
Yeah.
And it's like that's what I'm kind of seeing too, where it's like, it's like, I guess to use, I guess female stereotypes as an example, it's like there's such a fear, like all this talk about strong female characters. And then it's like when I see these characters, a lot of times it's like the people are like so afraid to do anything with the character that you either end up with a Mary Sue or an honorary man, or you just end up with a born the trope that's called Born Yesterday, which is like Born Yesterday hot chick, where it's like she's a hot chick but she's kind of dumb as a box of rocks because she's so innocent. That it's like so it's like you're trading in one stereotype for another really offensive stereotype.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's like it's just kind of weird how it's like it's going in this weird circle where it's like, I'm making this character so feminist, it's actually misogynist. So
after a while, we'll all be, what is that term? NPCs. We'll all all the characters written will all look alike and be
Right,
the same,
yeah.
have the exact same attitude, the same cookie cutter look.
Right,
And then we'll get back to all of those complaints that those kids in that podcast had about the Golden Age characters.
right, yeah. How
No
nobody knows
characterization, no drama, no nothing. Yeah.
Right. No, but you see, but yeah, I mean, it's just, I don't know. It's really weird out there because I've seen people also rally against the idea of drama in just like comics and anything. Like pretty much it's like, oh, if it upsets me, it can't exist.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what it boils down to. It's not like, oh, I cannot use a straw like an adult. It's like I have to have it made illegal.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah,
it's the tearing down of culture, isn't it? It's been,
yeah,
that's the thing. We had that. I don't know whether you saw a few last year when they threw a statue of a guy into the river.
right.
Wife's calling him to lunch. Mark, go have lunch. See the replay. Have fun. Thanks, Mark, very much.
This guy, I can't remember his name. He's down in the south of England, and I think he was around in the 1800s. I can't remember. I don't know, but he had a statue. Oops, thank you. Tea.
Oh, there we go.
Sorry. He had a statue erected because he virtually built the city, but he used slave labor.
Right. Yeah.
So when all this happened with that guy, that Floyd guy, whatever he was called, that
George
guy,
Floyd.
when all this kicked off, the people mainly they seem to be under 30. These people,
yeah,
pulled the statue down and threw it in the river, and replaced it with a black woman with a fist up, and all this. Right. But they didn't realize, obviously, that this guy was responsible for building the whole town and the library and the university. So they should tear it all down, shouldn't they?
I mean, what? It's like, what? A complicated people are complicated?
He built the houses these people were living in, so they should tear them down too, surely.
But that's the whole thing about context. It's like, I mean, on one hand, I kind of think that I understand the symbolism, but the problem is that usually the activism ends there. It's kind of like I guess like trying to bring it back around comics, it's like, they're saying it's like, oh, these comics shouldn't exist. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, but it's like, what are you really gaining by erasing it? Because usually it's like, okay, so these comics aren't seeing print anymore. Did your life improve without these comics? I mean, is society treating you more equally because these comics don't exist anymore? They're not in print anymore. Like usually it's like it's lazy activism that we're seeing. And it's like, and it's kind of like the whole thing where it's like, oh, comics creates juvenile delinquency and all that. That's lazy activism. They're not,
Yep.
That's the real issue I have. Like, I understand the symbolism, but it's just symbolism. If you're not building anything on top of that, it's like you need to sit down until you actually do something real. Go feed the homeless or something. It's like,
Anyway,
well, to me, especially back to comics. Why comics? Ignoring Eisner, ignoring the spirit, picking at Ebony. Or trying to dismiss him means you have to dismiss the entire body of work. Means that you miss out on literally a master of this art form.
Right. Yeah.
Keeping you in every 7-page story, drama, technique, sequential storytelling. Mm-hmm. That is so essential, and that a lot of, quite frankly, a lot of kids today don't have. And don't realize what the essentials are there. Dismissing Eisner because he had a stereotype wrong, and later learned from it. Especially go back and you read his graphic novels, and you see the work there of an educated individual who realizes the equality and the diversity necessary out there in society. A lot of his city works were amazing. Those graphic novels are incredible. Even A Contract with God, where he's talking about his ethnic background and the neighborhood that he grew up in, is so important to be seen needs to be out there and needs to be read and looked at. All of those spirit books, if you, like I said, if you dismiss that, and I'm sure we're not going to see a whole lot of spirit material reprinted in the future because of this.
Right.
Everybody afraid of that means that you're missing out on those valuable instructions. There's a lot to be learned, even in the incorrectness of one aspect. There's so many other aspects of that work that needs to be seen and looked at.
But didn't those two out and out racists, Lee and Kirby, introduce the first black character into mainstream? The black
very much so.
I'm saying that sarcastically, But
and that's the story on that is they were walking. All they had to do was look outside their window, and that's what Lee always used to say. We want to bring you the world outside your window on a more fantastic level. And that's why the Fantastic Four was fantastic.
And the thing is, though, too, is like, it's like we're not saying to not have these conversations. You see, that's the thing. It's like, have the conversations, just like this guys in these class was trying to have this conversation with Will Eisner himself. It's like, have the conversations, but don't erase them. Yeah. It's like,
don't ignore them.
Right. Don't ignore them. Don't erase them. It's like, because we need all the information we can in the context of everything.
Was the conversation this guy started, was it an intelligent conversation, or was he having a go at him?
I guess it depends on how you like they were seeing. I think it was like the first time. I don't know if it was like the first time they were seeing the character in class. So I guess it kind of took it as a shock.
Right.
Well, so, there are some visual depictions. Yeah. In fact, quite a lot of the Ebony back then with the really overinflated lips. That is stereotypically offensive.
Yeah, I mean, to kind of like bring up a related story that happened to me at SVA, again in Will Eisner's class, because this seemed to be the theme. So for 1 year, I was the editor of the Will Eisner Gallery, which is a collection of short stories that everybody in class would do. It was pretty much our year-end project. Mm-hmm. And I was editing, and one of the guys who was doing a short story, I don't remember if he was from Sweden or the Netherlands. I don't remember where he was from. But he did this silly little story about a pram that has adventures. It's literally just a pram that just floats around places and has adventures on its own. It was pretty funny.
You might need to explain.
A pram, a baby carriage. Just a baby carriage. Well, because he was calling it a pram, and it was Pram Adventures. I think that the title of
that's what we call them, prams.
Yeah. And so I was, it's like, so we were looking over the pages, and there was a scene where the pram ended up on an island that was full of primitives.
Okay.
And right. And you see, the problem was that, so he's European. So am I. We grew up on the same comics. So neither one of us neither one of us got the idea that maybe these depictions of these savages would be an issue, because these were the comics that we grew up with.
Yeah.
I mean,
the same primitives that you would find, say, in an old Looney Tunes.
Oh yeah, the bone in the nose and the whole thing. I mean, I would have to find this comic I would have to find my copy and show it to you, because it's really embarrassing to look at now. But like I said, at the time, it's like I said, these were the same comics that my entire family grew up on. So it didn't occur to me that there was something wrong with it. So I ran the story. Mm-hmm. And the kerfuffle that followed afterwards kind of makes me glad that social media didn't exist at the time. But there were some interesting editorials run in the newspaper, in the school newspaper, that it didn't out me by name, but I knew who they were talking. But I knew they were talking about me, and they were talking about the comic. And a lot of the Black students really did get up in arms about the comic to the point where they held little, like they destroyed copies of it. And the thing is, though, it's like, and at the
Germany, isn't it?
Well, you see, the thing is, though, it's like I look back on it now, and I'm like going, "What the f was I thinking?" Like I understand it now. Like I don't blame them now, But back then, I was like, "I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't get it." And it's like, it never occurred to me to talk to anybody because I was really uptight about the whole thing. But in the end, I just ended up ignoring it. But now, 20 years later, I'm like, oh yeah, maybe that was kind of a wrong.
As you became more educated and more empathetic,
right?
Society. Yeah, exactly.
Right. But it's like, but the whole point is that now I understand. That's why when I see, like I'm gonna have to find that comic to show you guys. I know I have copies around just to show you what got me into trouble. But the thing is, though, that's not a mistake I'm gonna repeat. It's like now I understand. It's like,
unless you want to, and that's the difference,
right? And then that's just
you can't say that people like Hitler wasn't educated.
I mean,
he chose to do that,
right? So it's like, yes, if I were to do it again, then I'm being purposefully obtuse and being, But back then it was just like, okay, so I understood. So now I understand why they were being antagonistic.
Yes.
So. At the same time, looking back, it's like, well, I can kind of understand if it looked like they were really going after Will Eisner for this caricature, I guess. So,
yeah,
it's complicated, and I think that's the whole point of the conversation. That it's like we're all people, and we react to the dominant culture, and if the dominant culture says that a certain thing is okay, most of us are kind of like going to follow it without thinking about it. Like there are words in my language I don't use anymore that I used to use 10 years ago. So it's the whole getting an education thing. It's like, okay, I know why it's offensive and why not to say certain words.
People know it's offensive and still do it. So where does the education come in, you see, in there? If you tell somebody something,
right,
doesn't mean they're going to go, oh yeah, sorry, I was wrong. But they choose to do that.
Well, another thing I like to say too is you can't save everybody.
That tips the scale from understanding and empathy to racism.
Yeah.
That's what that does.
And but the thing is that it's like you can't save everybody. You can because like there's nothing I can do to convince again that 14-year-old white girl on Twitter that me reading Lolita doesn't make me a pedophile.
Right.
I can't convince her otherwise. It's like that reading American Psycho does not make me a serial killer. That writing a scene in a book or in a comic doesn't say that I condone this behavior. It's called drama. It's supposed to be problematic.
Yes. Otherwise it's boring, yeah.
Empyrean Vol, now Linda Carter. There was a Wonder Woman.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Still is.
Little Daphne was disappointed. Flying. I'm way behind on here. Right. Reagan era. Yes.
Lots of yeses. too many yeses in a row. We think you're doing something else.
Greatest thing Linda Carter had for Wonder Woman was when she would transform by spinning around.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to say that.
Power move 10 out of 10. I always thought she was most powerful when she was running, but that's my side.
We thought that Sailor Moon invented the transformation sequence with everyone spinning and sparkles and stuff.
Screenwriting and editing was not so good. Yeah, I think we're still back on Wonder Woman. Are we that far behind in the? Maybe. Yes. Randy says, I thought Rogue One was fabulous movie. I agree about Lord of the Rings. Rogue One, I might have to do a video because there's so many people that are missing the point here. 10 minutes of Wonder Woman flying. Yeah, that was a mess.
LOL.
Yes, the Rankin Bass is so good. Okay, we are way back on the chat. Sorry, I wish they would make a Muppets version of The Hobbit. Yes,
I agree.
As close, unfortunately, that we'll get is the small pieces of dark crystal that we see. Rankin and Bass version, strictly visuals, and I loved it. John says 5 years ago, my Angel comic pushed too many emotional buttons as a web comic. reader said it was too un-PC and not safe for work. That's why I'm offering Bloodwing Angel as a printed work. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But the thing is, though, it's like, okay, so it's not, it's okay. So now that you know what it is, now you can make the decision whether you want to engage with it or not.
Yeah.
You know, that's the thing. And it's like, and that's kind of like where everyone gets all smooth brained after that it's like, oh, I don't like it, so it shouldn't exist. And it's like, no, it means that you're the one with the issue with it. So you're the one that has to make a decision whether you want to engage or not.
Like Randy Cullers says there, art has always been controversial.
Yeah.
That's what it's for.
Yep.
Yeah.
Need to be demonstrated specifically to the view of the artist.
Right.
Yeah, we can comment and critique, but the value is in what we say and think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Great points, Randy, Glenn, and Daphne.
I mean, for
Thanks
real,
so much
there
for listening,
was an article that I was reading about a painting by, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Sargent, where it's called Madame X. And all it is, I mean, it's the type of painting that everyone would recognize the second they saw it. Mm-hmm. And the painting is just a woman in a black dress just standing at a table. And the painting was so controversial when it came out that both Sargent and the model had to go into hiding. You know, I mean, it's like, yeah, what stirs controversy is so malleable that there is no, you know, oh, it's definitely this or it's definitely that. Mm-hmm. I mean, really, it's like I gotta find this painting just to show you guys. Like it was so controversial. Like I said, everyone had to go into hiding. The model actually contemplated suicide because of it, because she was getting completely ostracized in high society for it.
Hang on, I think I got it. Is this it?
Madame X.
Is that it?
Let me see. Yes, that's it. That's it. This painting was so controversial when it came out that it's like, and the thing is, though, it's a real person. The original painting was named after the model, but because of the reaction everybody had to it at the time, he changed the title to Madame X.
Wow.
You know, so it's like, you can't just say that's like, oh, this is controversial, this is un-PC. This is un-PC. At the time, in the context of the time, this was incredibly un-PC.
I think it's the table. The table's
the table that did it, yeah.
Could be it.
Did anybody ask the table if that harlot lean on her? You know.
Yeah. So it's like, yeah, it's like to say that it's like, oh, un-PC. It's like, yeah, you'd be surprised at what's un-PC sometimes. You know,
I think it's great.
Yeah, yeah.
And I can't see anything that would be remotely made controversial, except nowadays maybe that neckline was too plungy.
Well, you see, but that's the thing. That was one of the things that, you know, it's like, but also like the tone of her skin, the pose, everything. I mean, really, it's like to think that the people went into hiding because of this painting. Mm-hmm. You know, so it's like, yeah, I don't trust anybody that says that there's some kind of like experts on a moral arbiter expert. It's like, no, you don't.
No.
Yeah. Man, and the thing is, though, too, is like art. Attacks on art is the canary in the coal mine, because attacks on art is what teaches people what's acceptable to attack later. Mm-hmm. You know, like I said with the whole censorship thing, it's like, you know, it's like, oh, where were you guys when all these platforms were doing porn purges? You know, it's like where, you know, you have to worry about people writing something risque in your PayPal receipt, and then PayPal taking that as like, oh, you're doing something that's against our terms of service. You know, you're selling, you know, but it's, you know, it's art.
Isn't it funny how this stuff is always around, though?
Yeah, because it's like there's always going to be people who just, in the end, it's like it's proximity to power rather than actually caring about people.
That's so true.
Like, can I control you somehow?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, it's like they want the equal opportunity to put a boot on your neck.
Yeah, it's at best it's attention seeking.
Yeah, at best,
Very true.
yeah.
We
It's
would
not
call that
benign
attention
though.
whoring.
I wouldn't say it's benign, but at best,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
attention seeking.
One is
You know-
a lot of people now do not want to talk. They want to argue and fight.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, so artists are
That's
usually the front line for this type of thing. It starts, it's like because it's easy to say, oh, that art is bad. You
Yep.
know, it's like this art causes juvenile delinquency and this, that, and the other thing. And it's like, and it's kind of like you watch the Boiled Angel. It's like they didn't go after, those Florida senators didn't go after Robert Crumb. They went after some kid who was drawing like shitty little drawings in his notebook because like, oh, he's an easy target.
Yeah.
And we start with him because no one's going to say his stuff is art, but you don't have to. That's not the point.
Yeah.
You know, it's like,
Well, there's a sorry, go ahead.
Having misunderstanding of dialects is on both sides. Good morning, Grant.
Morning, Grant.
oh, that's the pram comment. Yeah, the pram.
Yeah.
There's a great quote by, I think it's somebody like, I don't read these things, but it's somebody like Plato, Socrates or somebody, and how, and that's what 3,500 years ago, and he says that conversation comes from intelligence, arguments come from ignorance.
Yeah, usually. Yeah.
I think that's really good. And if you think somebody like that wrote that 3,500 years ago, it just shows you how it's, the more things change, the more they remain the same.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like, it's like I'm watching, it's like I was watching I, Claudius about a month or so ago. And even some of the politics is like, really? They were still dealing with that back then?
We are past the top of the hour. Everybody out there in Indie Volt Radio Land, just want to let you know that you've been listening to the Philosophical Societal Hour.
Yes, exactly.
We talk about,
we're kind of talking about comics.
crazy talking society and putting it in proper context.
Last week we were talking about British comics and we didn't even mention them.
Yeah. This is Sunday Funnies for the 10th of January, 2021. And really, we were supposed to talk about why comics, but I think we swung that over to why not comics.
Right, exactly. Pretty much.
Eden C says on PC it's the same as what is sexy. It's too objective and left to personal preference. I'm sure that's preference. Arguing is a waste because there will never be one common standard. Or standard as it's constantly changes. Yeah, it does. It constantly changes.
Right.
What society norm now won't be societal norm 10 years from now.
Right.
That's right.
So
too late for us.
Unless you're watching Laughing and don't mind watching dancing painted girls in bikinis.
Right. Yeah.
So I'd follow up on my previous comment. I find that what I created 5 years ago is even more relevant today. So I haven't changed an un-PC thing about Bloodwing.
Yeah, that's the ironic thing about it, that usually you don't have to do a thing. Just society has to change around you. Yeah.
Sometimes, especially when you're doing art, I found you're ahead of the curve. Because you're thinking, artistically and ahead of what societal norms sometimes are.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, a bit late. Hello, all. Hello, Russ. How you doing? Black belt, comic book black belt. Only death can save us right now on demand in Indiegogo. So so why comics? Why not comics? Because you get to have all this fun. Well, comics are art, and as art, it opens itself up for this kind of societal conversation. So.
But it's because of the whole lowest common denominator thing. Comics is considered like not art, so it's an easy target for people, so
and also bad comics reaches and grasps and embraces really that lowest common denominator. A lot of times that's why you get a lot of substandard work out there, and that's that we're seeing by sometimes most times substandard creators that just don't know the art form, aren't aware of the art, don't care to know the art form,
but the cream will always come to the top.
Yes.
Right. I mean, that's the hope.
It does. It makes sense. It's not buying comics. If we create them and fill that vacuum that Marvel.
Right. Exactly. And I think part of it too is that I think what'll make it easier for us is that the more people let go of the idea that Marvel and DC are our savior. That it'll like empower us more as independent creators, because I think that a lot of what's happening now is that people are still waiting for Marvel and DC to get their act together, when it's like, and we're over here going, we're here, you can look over here.
if we're gonna swing this up to modern comics, the folks that are waiting for Marvel and DC to get their act together are sadly mistaken, because they don't care if they get their act together or not. They're just slowly going to decrease their workload and then disappear. And it's the retailers who are sitting there waiting for that to happen are going to have to start looking in other directions in order to, and if they want to stay retailing comics, they're going to have to find different, better comics to go out there and retail. So, and the way to do that is to keep their eyes and mind open to different distributors and different ways of making and getting income.
But isn't it a change in the times as well, though, as we were saying? Because if you think of I don't know when comics were selling millions in the 40s, weren't they? But TV wasn't there, was it?
All the way through the 50s.
Yeah, and then TV caught up and everybody watches TV, and then now it's the internet.
But sadly, it's so easy to draw that connection and to blame that on the drop in sales for comics when that really wasn't the case. The reason comic sales dropped as bad as it did, well, comics hit a big high point in sales during the war because they were shipping millions and millions of copies of comics over to the troops that were fighting, and that was their main source of entertainment, because they didn't have TV, they didn't have the net, that they barely were able to get a decent radio signal, and a lot of times they weren't getting American programming. They might be getting counter programming from the other side, but having that comic book there that they could roll up, stick in their backpack or their back pocket were always there, and they could carry it through them, through the foxholes if they had to, and had a means of entertainment while they were sitting there waiting.
I'll tell you that great story about Jack Kirby with that sergeant, didn't I? Sorry about that one. He went across the river.
Oh.
He chose him to go on this really dangerous mission across the river just so that he could put an X on a map because he could draw.
Yeah.
It was like that scene in Black Hawk Down where where one of the characters, he was able to get out of actual service, a desk job. He actually got a desk job because he was the only one that knew how to type.
And I'm sure that happened. That's how I started PC Magazine. Was because he could draw, and the troops needed some instructional on how to do things, and they weren't reading the standard instructional manual, but they would sit there and read a 2 or 3 page comic on how to disassemble and reassemble their weapon.
I mean, but because it's like Will Eisner showed us a bunch of those too, and it's like, and honestly, it's like I really do think they're brilliant. It's like I think that's why IKEA gets a lot of praise for their instructional manual, because it's like it just ran with the idea. Because it's like, who wants to read, it's like you're in the middle of wherever, and it's like, who wants to read like a dry instructional list when you can look at pictures and a lot of, I know for me, it's like, I'm a very obviously visual person. So it's like, I need somebody to show me as opposed to just reading instructions. So when he was showing these comics on how to clean a rifle and all this stuff, it was just like, it's like, oh, there you go. It's like YouTube before they had YouTube.
Exactly. Yeah.
About 30 years ago, I was working at a place, and they made kitchens and bedrooms, and I worked in the art department and things like that. And one of my tasks was to create the assembly instructions, which is what you're talking about, like with with a weapon or whatever it is. Yeah. And I had an idea of, they couldn't work out why people were ringing up and saying that it didn't work, and because they didn't. Basically, people didn't read them. People get their kitchen cupboard, put it on the wall, and then find a piece of it they'd not put in because they didn't read the instruction. So I developed one without any words, like a comic, and they didn't use it. They couldn't work it out. They couldn't. The people my managers who looked at it said,
"It's ridiculous."
Yeah, I said, well, they're not reading it anyway, and I've spent this time doing this for you, and they didn't use it.
Oh, that's a shame. I mean, because I bet you it's like all those complaints would have stopped It's like,
Yeah.
oh, the picture says this belongs here.
Yeah, I said, why can't we just try it? Just try
Yeah.
it and see if you can get some kind of response from it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But they didn't use it. So
Uh-huh.
they probably thought it was like a comic, you know, and they couldn't understand why anybody would want to read a comic, which is what we're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Comic book black belt. Russ says, unfortunately, the old guard of the characters we grew up with need to be let go of, and new characters and stories need to come. People think Marvel, DC when they think comics.
Yeah.
That's true.
It's like, that's why I don't say I draw comics, because usually the next question is, oh, which ones? It's like, what?
You work for Marvel. Oh, you work for Marvel.
Exactly.
With what Russ says there, I think we need both.
Yeah.
Yeah, the job is to make people think indie when they think comics. Yeah.
You know,
Or just think sequential art in general,
Right, exactly.
instead of pigeonholing. Oh, well, you draw those guys in tights. Yeah.
Right. Because again, it's like, I'm sure in Europe the answer would be different if you said, "Oh, I draw comics."
Well, I think we should do both. I think we should use the old characters and create new ones, but instead of changing the old ones.
That's very true. I think there's always room for great new icons and new IPs. Always. Yeah. And again, that's part of the indie and alternative creators' responsibility. I think that we're not seeing enough of. Too many people are out there because that's what we swing this back to why comics. Those great characters out there were really what got me into comics, and it wasn't just the fact that this guy was a duck. You know, Donald had a short temper. Uncle Scrooge had all the money and was incredibly greedy. Gyro Gearloose was a hardcore inventor. You know, that when you talk about barks and types and drawing people and ducks and beagles and beagle boys and that kind of stuff, it's just it's the character, the IP, the look, the fact that you can take a story and in comics and sequential art, take it and to its farthest extreme and over exaggerate it, sometimes bad, like we were talking about Stereotypes, but other times in some really great creative ways. And that was one of the reasons Plastic Man was so big and so popular with Jack Cole, as he realized the possibilities of that character because he could literally do anything with him.
Yeah.
And it was only stopped literally by his imagination. And that's comics in general. It's only stopped by a person's imagination and lack of skill or ability in order to transfer what they're seeing in their mind down on the paper. Even today, because not everything can be CGI'd, not everything can be, you have to have that imagination first and take it to that point in order for a tech to sit there and perform it, even in CGI. So you get these great characters out there and you break these great barriers, like with Jack Kirby and Lee when they did Black Panther. So a major character. Fantastic Four had just come off of fighting God, literally, with Galactus and Silver Surfer, and they end up in the middle of Africa and they have their asses handed to them by one person who knew how to fight and was trained since birth to do it. And that embedded Black Panther into comic,
great character.
Phenomenal character. And then, even then it wasn't totally fleshed out. It took a couple more people in order to grow it out, especially Don McGregor, to take and work on the society and stretch out the kingdom and the actual structure of the character.
Well, I mean, but I think that's like, I would think that was like normal because of like the monthly nature of books. It's like you can only think up so much just to get an issue out. So it would make sense that different people would start adding to the mythos to move the story along.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's what Kirby intended, wasn't it? When he went to DC, he wanted to create characters and then hand them over to other people to produce. So I think he was looking at probably not doing all that work, but he was. I think he was wanting each character to grow.
Right.
He said that Don McGregor with the Black Panther, that he wasn't allowed to grow in the Fantastic Four because it wasn't his book, was it? So he wouldn't be allowed to grow in there, and that's why they gave it their own book and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, even with New Gods and that, when he went back over to DC, they didn't know how to handle those books, those properties. New Gods for Mr. Miracle. That's why they only lasted the short period that they did. But now they can't get past them. DC is constantly trying to rebirth the New God property, and they have no clue what Kirby was actually trying to do. Very few clues. There you get some occasional small flashes, but nobody really knows that or has that talent that Kirby did for that wonderment that he brought to them books.
It's like his imagination was so big, people had like they can't comprehend it, you know.
You can't really blame anybody for that, can you? Because he was pretty good, wasn't he? So
well, he had time. He was raised in it also. You know, he grew up drawing comics, doing comics, and having to be creative just in order to get a page rate. Yeah. You know, that's why Simon and Kirby created romance comics and the Black Magic book and the different things that he did over and over again. Well, Kirby recreated Thor in the pantheon of the gods like 4 or 5 times. You know, and because he kept jumping from company to company to property to property. Eternals would have never existed if Thor hadn't existed. New Gods would have never existed if Inhumans hadn't existed. Inhumans wouldn't have existed if Thor hadn't had that, if they hadn't gone that cosmic during that period and sent Kirby off on some crazy spurts of imagination. As he was sitting there doing, from what I understand, he was doing character drawings all through Thor, going through and digging up all sorts of mythology and pantheons and different gods and stuff, and creating characters, which they still used, you know, all the way through Satan 6 and just, you know, through all.
He said to me that
go ahead.
He said to me there's probably only 10 ideas in the world. It's just variations.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, it's just, and if you look at his work, especially, you can see that, like you say, Thor was around in the 50s, wasn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Before the journey into mystery, you know, before we get the Thor, you know, we had it before. It's always the same.
I
think it's tomorrow's or the Kirby Museum. I think it was the Kirby Museum that went back and showed every aspect of Thor that showed up in Marvel in Journey into Mystery. Mm-hmm. Just about every one Kirby had created previously back in the 50s and 60s in short stories. He had done Thor before. He had created Mjolnir before. Had designed the hammer already. Pretty much had everything all done and just connected a few dots and pitched it to stand for a character in Journey into Mystery.
Well, recently I found a story. I can't remember what it's called now. Oh, Space Garbage, it's called. by Kirby, and it's got this guy, and he's sort of fastened or tied to a rock floating in space.
Yeah.
Well, who's that? That's Blastar. That's where Reed Richards found Blastar. He was ejected from his society and tied to a rock that was heading into the negative zone.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. He's just, like he says, it's just variations on a theme.
It's just funny to hear
and that would tie back. Sorry, Daphne, to step on, but that would even tie back to old Roman and Greek mythology. Of people tied to
A lot of people got tied to rocks back in Greek and Rome.
Dropped on the head.
Yeah, I mean, no, because it's just funny. I mean, just even hearing the fact that even Thor wasn't always Thor as we know him now. Like, it's like I don't know. It's like I kind of thought that these characters kind of like, you know, sprung full formed from the head of Zeus type of thing. You know, it's like, and it's like, oh no, of course, it's like, of course that iterations of that character would exist until it became Thor as we know him.
Yeah.
You know, so that's funny. Like, I don't know why it didn't occur to me that, you know, that they would work the same way as every other artist out there.
Well, you can take just about everything that Marvel did, especially during that 60s period, because they were running full bore as fast as they could in order to get things out into stand. Well, we were talking off camera about hitting printing deadlines and that kind of thing. But look at the Fantastic Four as a prime example. Fantastic Four didn't just spring out full blown as a family or a group. Human Torch was back during Golden Age character. He just gave it to a young kid. You know, the powers to a young kid. The Thing came from all of these great old stories about monsters. That's the same place that Groot came from. Was from that era of all these the monster stories, because they couldn't sell superhero stories, so they were selling giant monster stories. Godzilla was big, and that kind of, you got Fing Fang Foom, and just about any 4 or 5 letters that they could put together and have it somewhat sound guttural, turned into a monster during Where Monsters Roam, Where Creatures Dwell, or whatever. Marvel survived for a long time in the 50s doing books aimed at women and giant monster books and westerns. That was their big genre. They did Patsy Walker, what was it, Millie the Model, and all of these old strange tales, adult, adventure, fantasy, Tales to Astonish, Tales of Suspense. Those books that were all short stories that were mostly monster books or gifted human type, futuristic science fiction, O. Henry tales, pretty much, done in fantastical levels.
But the Fantastic Four comes from challenges, doesn't it?
And yeah, that's what I was going to say. That the real base comes out of challenge. That family unit comes out of the Challengers of the Unknown that Simon and Kirby were doing at DC. Mm-hmm. They just brought over the idea of 4 people that survived a catastrophe and went on to do fantastical things, turned it into a family, and added Human Torch because they had rights to the old Marvel Golden Age characters, and brought in the Thing because giant monsters were big at the time. Mm-hmm. So you had a giant monster, a Golden Age superhero, a mom and dad, and what powers do you give them? Well, we can make the girl disappear. Okay, here's Invisible Girl. And then the guy, well, Plastic Man's no longer coming out, so we can have the guy stretch. So they had the guy stretch. So,
yeah. Was that like purposefully symbolic though?
I'm not sure.
Invisible Girl be the, it's like, oh, the girl disappears.
I'm not sure if that's the case. I was just saying that to say it. But remember, she also was able to push people away with thought. Right,
but that's my point, though.
I'm not sure if there was a psychological reference there at all. There have been people that have drawn that connection and said that it's out there. But I'm not sure if that was a conscious thing on their part, or if they wanted I doubt that they wanted the girl just to go away and turn invisible. But what was really interesting is that it took them 20, 30 years and John Byrne to come up there and go, you know what? She is actually the most powerful person in the group, because if she can control force with her mind, she can do this, she can do that. All she has to do is imagine it. All of a sudden the character can fly just by lifting herself up. And she had never done that before, I don't think, until John Byrne had her doing it.
She didn't do much before John Byrne, did she, to be fair? In the background.
I'm just trying to think. She was pretty much in the background and doing a lot of Reed.
Yeah.
Again, a stereotype of the day.
Right.
If taken out of context, those are just and it's a big problem in comics now. Those are just those masculine,
right. Yeah, that's
books being written, because back then, if you look through all of your entertainment, you always had the damsel in distress that the big hero would come in and save.
Right.
So that's the way it should be. As
not unusual. Well, come on. Glenn.
Well, I mean, speaking of that, though, again, because JD's the one who buys most of the comics in this house. He was showing me, again, Italian, something about the Italians. They did a Conan comic. Mm-hmm. That I thought was really fascinating, because it's like, because it's like when I think of Conan, I think of Bashima, I think of Barry Windsor Smith, and it's like, so here were 2 Conan stories done in a very European aesthetic, I guess I could say, like it's kind of like that realistic cartoony style, which is my jam. But it's just weird to see Conan done in that style. Mm-hmm. And the funny thing is that they did Conan exactly the way I always imagined Conan to be, which was very, I guess you could say, un-PC. I guess so.
Well, he was a barbarian.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Included in the title.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Although for people, the book is called the Cimmerian. Cimmerian. Yes.
Cimmerian.
Yeah. I only, because I only really know him as Conan, because I guess like there's still kind of some kind of trademark dispute, even though Conan is technically in the public domain, the name isn't. Yeah. So, there's some kind of trademark dispute with the Howard estate, so they had to call it that instead. So, but it's Conan. It's just that it's not on the title. It's not on the cover. And it's like, and it's 2 stories of Conan being Conan, and it's like I wouldn't have it any other way, because that's,
Well, from what I understand, they're direct adaptations from the Howard books,
right.
the Howard short stories. And that character is not really the stereotype Marvel character that you see. It's close, but not quite. There's a lot to Conan. Howard, and I've sat back and listened to Howard just recently on just about everything is available, because it's in public domain, as audiobooks up on YouTube of all of the Conan.
Oh, okay, that's cool. Okay.
Works, as well as everything Lovecraft is up there also.
Right. I gotta check that out, because like I always it's like like I'm trying to read the Fritz Lieber Fafard and the Grey Mouser, and even though the books are short, I'm having a really hard time concentrating, because it's like I don't know, it's like the older I get, the more the attention span of a goldfish I end up with.
Well, I think Lieber also has a tendency to literarily wander.
Right. Okay.
Oh yeah, I'm telling a story here.
If there's somebody on YouTube actually reading the book, that maybe I might have a better time getting through it.
Well, one thing I really enjoyed listening to was By This Axe I Rule, which is a King Kull story. He's a king of Atlantis. And you would think, here's the standard barbarian story by this macho Howard type character. And it's literally a story of a king who's tired of the red tape. He's used to being out in the field and fighting and all of this, and now he has to sit and dictate diplomatically. And after a coup attempt that bloodily, he barely escapes, he just gets pissed off and grabs an axe off the wall and goes, boom, hey, this is the way stuff goes. I guess what? I'm king. That rule is wrong. That rule is wrong. And if you want to argue with it, I got this axe.
Right.
I got it right here. Bring it, and it's really an interesting character study, of sitting there listening to it and going, wow, that Howard could really write some great stories. I mean, he really wrote. He didn't just do your standard, what you would consider to be a standard Conan story. Here's a man who's just frustrated, at wit's end, at his physical end, and just puts his foot down and goes, screw you all. I'm king. Done.
So since you've been listening to so did you listen to like some of the Conan stories?
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So would you say that what we know as Conan based in the comics is actually just embellishments by the people working on the comic?
No, it all depends upon how much the writer cared about the original source material, because a lot of the early stuff, the Barry Windsor Smith material, is really close to the books.
Right.
But that's because Roy Thomas loved those stories and stuck to them and did a lot of. Tower of the Elephant is an amazing piece of work. It takes place when Conan's young and is learning about not just about himself and thievery, but sorcery.
Right.
He's running across. Hey, what's the hell is this big elephant chained up here for? That kind of thing. And it's really a good story. The thing that fascinated me is you always read about how these pulp authors were slinging hash and just telling titillating tales of just offhanded melees and just roughly put together stories of violence, bloodshed, and stuff. And no, these are actually incredibly well-written stories.
Right.
And it's so different from the perception I had as a kid of what made a pulp story. And you can go, and there are those out there. There are those kind of pulp stories out there, but that's why somebody like Howard rises to the top, again, like what we were saying before, is because they're that good.
Right.
The stories are that good, and they're some amazing pieces, literally, of literature.
Right. Oh, because I've heard the same thing about Ian Fleming, and that the James Bond books are actually nuttier than the movies.
They are, yeah.
I have never sat down and read one of the books.
Right.
Never have, but I've read the comic strip. The comic strip's awesome.
Right.
So the adaptions are really cool. The farther along the comic strip gets, the more it becomes like the movie and the movies, and they start leaning back on the James Bond misogynistic stereotyping.
Okay.
A lot of half naked women, a lot of getting the girl.
If you read the books, you'll see all that, or you'll read all that.
Okay, right.
But they're good.
Right.
Well,
I'm going to defend them, aren't I?
A big thing that folks are so easy to dismiss, and this goes back to these comics also.
Right.
You can just you see the like Shazam, which really is a pressure point for me. DC has never gotten close. CC Beck was 100% right when he stopped working on Shazam in the 70s. The writing quality on those stories don't come anywhere near the stuff that was out in the 40s. Right. And even the material that they've reprinted since then have barely scratched the surface of the imagination, craziness, and sheer whimsy that these old books and old stories used to have. There's a reason these comics sold in the millions when they came out. There's a reason the EC books sold in the millions. There's a reason the Crime Does Not Pay sold in the millions. And it wasn't because, they were glorifying violence. It's because there was a quality to them that very few comics have matched since then. And the majority of those books literally made everybody else's careers because people in the business recognized, George Tuska, you come from Crime Does Not Pay. You do amazing work. Come on. Yeah. You can work for Marvel, draw Hulk, But there's a reason when you go back and you look at this stuff, there's a reason why it was popular, and you have to go back and see why it was. That those Conan stories were incredibly high in quality. They weren't just some guy sitting at the typewriter.
Right. Yeah. And then he punched this, and then he punched that, and then he had sex with the girl, and then he punched that.
There's a heck of a lot more depth to them.
Right.
I think all modern stuff is like, it's all been diluted. It's all watered down, and there's not. I always think that the talent for anything is always walking about. Right. But in my opinion, the wrong people are getting the leg up. And I think the talent is there, but it's not being used because it doesn't tick a box or it doesn't fit.
Right. Yeah. Because
I mean, if you think about it, if Ian Fleming approached the Penguin today with that stuff, they'd kick him out of the building, probably. But it's among the best stuff we have.
Yeah, and the thing, and it's like in James Bond along with Conan, it's like I wouldn't have the character any other way, because because James Bond is another one of these characters that gets a lot of grief from the Twitterati, where it's like, he's sexist and this, that, and the other thing and whatever. It's like they never call him violent though, but they always call him sexist. Yeah. And the funny thing is that, like, I don't know. It's like it kind of like to me, it's like I guess like it just depends on how you're looking at it, because the way I look at it, it's like, when he's going up against, like Pussy Galore and Octopussy and all these, all these Bond girls and stuff, it's like that in and of itself was a fight, that I wanted to watch,
What are they going to do now? They're going to make Jane Bond. Is she going to be some kind of slut, sleeping with all the men? And
well, you see, no, they're not going to do that because they don't want to do that.
Well, then it's not the same character, then, is it? It's the same thing with Doctor Who. It's a woman that she's just resigned. Did you know that?
Yeah,
she's just resigned because the ratings are the lowest ever.
Well, not just that, but most Doctors only last 3 seasons lately.
Right.
So Eccleston was the exemption. He lasted 1.
Right.
But that was a whole different fluke. But anyway,
that's because he didn't want to get stereotyped, isn't it? Yeah. And now he wishes he had been.
Yeah.
Well, no, but I mean, to go back.
By the time he didn't want to be stereotyped, it was too late.
Well,
that's what that was. But that's a whole nother story. But sorry.
But I mean, no. But to go back to James Bond, I guess it's like, I guess like again, I guess one of the picadillos that people have is also it's like the idea of sexuality in comics,
Mhm.
and it's like, you know, and like that's a whole thing. It's like, oh well, it's a trope, it shouldn't be in there, and it's like, well, you know, like James Bond, I think you'd lose a lot of the character if you didn't have that type of tension in the stories.
Well, they did that recently with what's he called? Who's James Bond now? They had him sleeping with Moneypenny, didn't they? Before he
Daniel
knew.
Craig.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
What's the point of that?
Yeah.
If you watch the Sean Connery and Roger Moore films, when Lois Maxwell played Moneypenny, there's especially in the Sean Connery ones, there's this obvious tension there.
Right. Yeah.
But now there's no tension because he's given her one, and he's fallen in love with M.
Right.
You know, Judi Dench. What's the point of that?
Right. It's like, yeah, it's like there's no, it's like you had characters like Octopussy for him to fight, you know, it's like those are the ones he fought. but you had but you had these other characters for the tension.
Mm-hmm.
You know, those are the ones just like, you know, just kiss already. But the whole point is that you never get that.
But now they've done that, it just ruined it. They just ruined 60 years of continuity by having him sleep with the girl.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, it's, you know, it's like these weird things that people want to change, and in the context of it, doesn't make any sense.
That's right.
You know, and it's like you're missing the point. You know, it's like you don't, you know, it's like you don't really change Conan. You don't really change James Bond. I mean, it's like whatever they're gonna do to James Bond after this, I mean, to me, is not James Bond.
That's right.
You know, so it's like. In the end, it's like it doesn't matter to me either way. That doesn't mean anything to me, you know.
Yeah. But wasn't there a Doctor Who with Donald Sutherland in it, a pilot?
Wow,
no, not that I'm aware of. Not Donald Sutherland. Boy, I would have loved to have seen it though.
John Hurt. I remember John Hurt being.
No, he was a special, like an in-between type doctor type of thing.
I'm sure somebody will point this out. I'm sure
Donald Sutherland, Peter Cushing, I know, was in.
There's a pilot for a film. It was for a film. They were going to make a film, and maybe Donald Sutherland was up for the part. I'm not sure, but anyway, the point I'm making is that what happens at the beginning is that doctor, whoever it was going to be, forces his sidekick to the floor, to a girl, and has sex with her. And it was like, he doesn't do that. He's
no.
So what's going on? Somebody will know. I'll find out.
Yeah, I'd never heard of Sutherland being up for the part, but there's a lot of people that come up for Doctor Who and James Bond that don't make it. Just
well.
The British press seems to thrive on just like the American side.
Speculation.
Well, yeah.
That's why James Bond should never be an American. You see, he's got to be
exactly. That would make that's what Jason Bourne is for. Jason Bourne is our version of James Bond, or John Wick. You know, that's what we get. We get that.
The Mission Impossible one. That's James Bond as well, isn't it?
Oh well, exactly.
The title.
I always thought if they did an Americanized version of Doctor Who, the TARDIS would end up being a porta potty anyway.
Oh boy, because that's the only closest thing we have that looks like that.
We read this before. Unfortunately, the old guard of characters, and we got the jobs to make people think indie. Yes, we did that already. Let's skip down one. I work for a company, and they several times have looked at doing indie comics in our stores, and because the creator flakes out, can't deal with the quantity needed for a continuing storyline.
Oh, we could do an entire episode just on that.
If you're still working for that company, maybe you need to get a hold of it.
No, it's the thing is though, it is a huge problem though. But I think that stems from the thing that I said in the beginning, where these guys were saying, "Oh, comics is easy. Comic is the easy medium," and it's like, "Oh, let me smack you through the screen."
Unfortunately, that's an attitude that pervades way too much in this industry right now. Oh, I'm going to do comics now, and then I'll step out and do whatever Netflix series, or I'll film my movie you later, but in the meantime, I'll do funny books so that they can get an idea of what I want to, what I see. And it's like, no, dude, this is a whole different medium. You should not be here. You should not be here if you don't want to do comics. Please don't do comics.
Right. Yeah.
We beg you. You're only diluting the art form and trying to keep it in a bad pigeonhole that never needed to get into in the first place. But yeah, do good comics. Good luck with that, Glenn. Marvel and DC pretty much have pretty much ruining my childhood heroes. Yeah. That's why you need to create new ones. But if they respected them, I'd be 100% behind you. Well, give it time. They might. Now that they're looking at or not caring about what they're doing, they might just open everything up for licensing, and then you'll see.
Let me throw some gasoline on the fire here. But if Marvel and DC were pretty much doing the comics the way everybody claims they want the comics to be, and not trying to tick boxes or whatever, it's like, do you think that independence would have gotten as much attention as we do now? Because everyone's being satisfied by what Marvel and DC is doing, so why do they have to look in our direction?
That's a group of a little bit of backwards speculation there that we're never really going to know the true answer to that. It's just that everything runs in cycles, and companies will erode as other companies go forward.
I think the indie movement, let's call it, would have come through because of social media. When I was reading comics, there was no social media. That's what I got was what I got. But now I can see lots of things. So I think they would have come through with it, whatever Marvel and DC do.
Go back farther and speculate where comics would have been if whoever was throwing these comics up against Senate hearings and Wortham, who I think was attention whoring and demented in his thinking, and he eventually it turned out to be exactly the case. Where comics would be today if comics were allowed to grow up when they were growing up in the 50s, because you were getting EC works that were true art coming up. You were Crime Does Not Pay was handling more intellectual material. You were getting you had the titillating stuff. You had the sharp object to the eye material and the denigration of women and all of those tropes were going through. But what if in the 50s we actually worked through them? What would have happened with comics? Would we have ended up even more sophisticated than the European or Japanese markets today if that damn Comic Code Authority hadn't kicked in and the publishers at the time who were doing kiddie literature decided to pigeonhole comics as kiddie literature, and which took us another 10, 15, 20 years in order to break out and get past that stupid seal.
Wow, that's a speculation that breaks my heart.
Because and again, where would comics be? Because there's such an interesting tapestry that works around that. If it wasn't for the comic code, you would have never had Bill Gaines out there looking for a different avenue to do work. You wouldn't have had decades of classic Mad comics out there because of that. Did Kurtzman going off to the West Coast and finding the base code of core of underground artists, would that have even led to the underground movement, which led to the black and white movement, which led to the direct market, which led to the retail shops? Where would that have happened? And what would have happened there? Would comic shops now, if the code hadn't formed, would comic shops have existed? If Image Comics hadn't sprouted up, would there have been a black and white bust? Would there have been a really bad, poorly produced color superhero comics have existed? Would the Circle template era have happened? Or objectifying, that's the word, objectifying of women happened, and there was an undeniable period there that happened. Large-breasted women and credit, which still goes on in certain books today, because they still cater to a market that buys them. If the market wasn't there, those products would shrivel up and disappear. Would the Marvel and DC be at the point that they're at today if they hadn't relaxed their understanding of the market? And I'm trying to put this strategically nicely here, and allowed people with no skill, I'm not going to say no talent, but that might follow along with it, to do inferior products to knock the sales down on their books. Who knows? There's all sorts of different speculations and alternative paths. It's like you watch an Endgame and you see the Ancient One come up and kick a gem, and start a whole nother timeline. There's so many other little gems during that line and so many other threads that things could have gone out, and we could have been in an entirely different industry and entirely different situations. But
wow, that's a lot of talk.
That's why I love comic history. That's totally why I love it. Because there's so much back that's happened. And it's one great big graph, like you see of the troubleshooting graphs. So if this happened, you follow this line down to this box. This box splits over into two boxes. Yes, no, splits down to another box. Another set of whole boxes underneath that. If all of this stuff had never happened, where in the world would this art form be? Just probably in an incredible spot. And we can see that in the British market, in the European market, in the Japanese market, especially the Italian market, where they're kicking out different formats and different size books and properties.
But this timeline we've had is the only thing that was ever going to happen.
Yeah, I guess.
You know, when you get to that T junction. And you're going to go right, but you go left, you were always going to go left.
Well, in this reality, yes.
Well, yeah, all right. We've got multi-dimensions. Everything is happening at the same time everywhere in million universes.
And now even stupid politics gets in the way, because if these people hadn't been ostracized, who other people up in the offices voted in the wrong direction, and whether they were right or not.
That's right, yeah.
Who knows? But those people get ostracized. They go out and find a way to get around it, and now are making 6-7 figures on crowdfunding campaigns.
Right? Yeah.
Reinvigorating an art form.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's just what it is. I mean, the speculation. That speculation was amazing.
Isn't it crazy?
But in the end, this is.
I'm writing a book.
Yeah, you should write 2 books.
Yeah, really.
Well,
that's what the wife says. Why don't you end this one? Start the next one.
Yeah.
You could write the alternative history of comics.
The timeline, the other timeline.
I'm out there now trying to find any evidence of whether Wortham and William Marston ever talked to each other, because there's a mutual philosophy there going in different directions that is really fascinating to me about how comics can influence, as an art form does, the public and the youth.
Well, but the thing is, that's the thing, because it's like it does. Because there's a fine line between saying that, comics causes violence or whatnot, but at the same time, it's like it's just as ridiculous to say that it doesn't influence anything. It's like companies spend billions of dollars trying to figure out how the most efficient way to influence public behavior.
How does it influence? How does reading comics influence people?
It just like reinforces. Well, it's part of like. It reinforces ideas. It introduces ideas.
Yeah, but not everybody's reading them.
Well, no. But I'm just talking about just in as media in general, that it's like there's a fine line between saying that it's responsible for all this behavior, but at the same time, it's not benign as well.
Yeah, it's clearly not responsible. Yeah. As I said before, how many comics was Genghis Khan reading before he went?
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Around the world.
How many comics did Hitler get a hold of?
That's right. I
think actually, if we can blame anybody for Hitler, it's Disney. Because Hitler was a Disney. It's like, did you see the paintings, the fan art that Hitler did for Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs? It seems that he was obsessed with the movie, that he actually there is a painting that someone had bought at auction, just a regular landscape by Hitler or whatever, and he opened up the frame. And there were other paintings inside the frame, and they were of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs that Hitler had painted because he was so in love with the movie.
I thought he was going to get all that stuff banned.
It might have been out of spite. Maybe Disney didn't return his letters.
Who knows? It's like, it was just so funny to see.
So,
What if Adolf had been accepted to the corporation as an Imagineer?
I was going to say, so there's two people to blame. Well, there's three reasons why he came along. One is because they didn't allow him to go to university.
Right, exactly. If that freaking Austrian school had just let him in, history definitely would have been on a different trajectory.
And then he couldn't draw Disney, and then we created him in the First World War, and created a vacuum for him to go into.
Right. So, timelines are interesting.
There's a whole subsection of science fiction out there that addresses alternate histories. Just interesting. Man in the High Castle. If you haven't seen that on Amazon, very fascinating.
Right.
Very fascinating stuff.
Yeah. But also, it's like that's also the reason why Will Eisner, taking it back, Will Eisner did his whole story about the the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, that whole his last story, because he wanted to use his work to counter what Henry Ford had done to propagate that book, so it's like Will Eisner thought he could influence people with his work. So I just don't remember.
And Will was a master, if not the.
Right. Yeah.
He had gone and done so many things that everybody, whether they want to admit it or not, will be following in his footsteps for decades to come.
Right.
They're doing sequential art. Yeah.
So it's like, if I just think that if Will Eisner could think that he could influence people with his artwork, then there's kind of something to it on a certain level. Not to the, but at the same time, not to the point where it's like, oh, violence exists because he drew Ebony that way or something,
because there was no violence in the world before Ebony.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Or stereotypes. Or
I always think that the only thing that people get influenced by is maybe the method of what they're going to do. Like the Romans were quite violent, but they passed into myth now as these fantastic civilization. But if you look at them, they were just warmongers, weren't they?
Right.
They just laid waste to it. They just conquered everywhere. So that's pretty much what Hitler wanted to do.
Right.
So, but maybe in 1,000 years we'll look at Hitler and think, oh, what a great guy. Nice uniforms. And
right, Hugo Boss. He got a designer.
And don't forget, he created the autobahns, and he created Volkswagen.
Volkswagen.
Okay, he killed a few people on the way, but he was just a bit misguided.
Mussolini made the trains run on time.
Right.
Yeah. Let's run through this.
Stalin doesn't count because he killed his own people. You can only kill your own people.
That's right. Yeah.
The ruin my childhood complaint comes from personal preference and specific bias, as opposed to general lore and appreciation of the comic or medium.
Yeah, I always found that argument weird, that whole ruin my childhood, because it's like, as somebody who grew up with a lot of properties that either like never got expanded on or did get expanded on in a way that I didn't like. In the end, I just learned to ignore that stuff. My childhood is fine and intact. So I don't know, when people say my childhood is ruined, I actually don't know what that means. It's like, I don't know, did they stop? You could still watch the old She-Ras if you don't like the new one. You can still watch the old Voltrons. You can still,
Well, I tell everybody, all of my superheroes died at Crisis and Heroes Reborn.
Oh, so there you go. So it's
a whole different universe. And every time, one of the things that saved me with watching the X-Men movies is that this isn't my X-Men.
Right.
This is somebody else's interpretation of X-Men they've turned into a movie.
Right. Yeah. Like, because it's like
over and over again. Yeah.
Because I wouldn't say completely hate, but I really dislike the portrayal of Rocket Raccoon in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. Doesn't stop me from buying all the merchandise, though.
I feel the same way about Star-Lord. They took that and really wimped him up real bad, turned him into a, quite frankly, remember, folks, we're TVMA, DLSV. Right. They really turned him into a pussy. Where in the actual books, in the original books, he was a very heroic character who was in a very rough situation. That one issue of that Claremont, Byrne, and Austin wrote and did, I think either during their X-Men span or right after their X-Men span, of Star-Lord, is pure. It's more Star Wars now than it is Star-Lord or Guardians of the Galaxy. It's really an amazing piece of work.
Mm-hmm.
I need to go back and read that again. That's really a good story.
With all the rest of the stuff.
Yeah. When Byrne came in with the Malice persona, where Sue Storm would put invisible force bubble in people's lungs to get stop breathing, you'll start paying closer attention to that character. Yeah. He went and took that character in some pretty imaginative. That's when she turned from Invisible Girl to Invisible Woman.
Wow. Yeah.
Sounds fun. Don't like it. Don't read it. Creative.
There you go.
Creativity is primary. TARDIS would be a hot dog stand in the U.S. I don't know about that. I'm afraid it would be a porta potty. Comic Blast will make designing comics a cinch. Oh, let's not start anything. Russ, what are you trying to start there? I'm glad I didn't get to that one sooner. No, sorry. Xena Anatoff was a fight, but what was underrated, since she trained to deal with the sexual overtones that is normal in Bond. Actually, it's a whole different character. It's a whole different situation, a whole different version. You can't even really call her James Bond.
No, yeah.
You could give her the 007 notation, License to Kill, but it's not a James.
But you see, but that's the problem. That's what it is that that's the studio still wanted to bank on the IP name, but completely changing the essence of the character. Yeah. I mean, it's like you could have made a completely different series of movies with a new character.
It doesn't change the Sean Connery movies, which you can see for free.
In the end, it's like, you don't watch that one, but you watch the old one. You're still there.
Yeah. I didn't ruin your childhood at all. It just, they're ruining the current kids' childhood.
Right, exactly.
These characters the way that you did. Bond babes, starting from Roger Moore era, served a purpose than being eye candy.
Yeah, that's how I always felt about them too. That it's like, everybody was always dismissive about the Bond girls, but I mean, they were like their own force to recken with, which you had to.
A lot of them. Some of them were very stereotyped at the time.
I'm probably wrong on this, but I think that men have been looking at beautiful women since Adam and Eve. So what's the problem?
You're that wrong on it. That's how the species continues.
Yeah.
That and the other way around too.
Yep.
Aquaman made $1 billion. Just remember that.
Right.
Aquaman.
Well,
and if Jason Momoa had been cast, how much money do you think it would have made?
Yeah, it's kind of like how there's some people who don't understand why 300 has a huge female following.
Yeah,
it's like, really? We have to explain this to you?
I still keep trying to get the wife to watch Spartacus because I'm sure she would enjoy it.
Yeah,
just for the scenery.
Yeah.
Anyway, for those of you who don't remember Miss Mayday, Grace Jones.
Oh, yeah.
But Grace Jones wouldn't have taken that part if she couldn't have been that kind of character.
Grace Jones.
She would have done that.
Yeah.
Because she was just that strong of a person. And the American Bond is our man Flint. Yeah. Named after Flint. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway. Randy's Alternative History of Comics, where he is EIC 500 a page rate. Russ, I'd probably pay a little higher than that if I was EIC at Marvel, but that's a whole nother.
That's how low our standards are right now.
There we go. Panels Like Sliders by Randy Zimmerman. Yeah. Alternative history based on slight changes of comic history. Yeah, you never know. You never know. Like I said, I'm doing a book.
It's like, it's like a Randy in a past timeline steps on a butterfly and then
Sound of Blunder. There we are.
There you go, yeah.
That's I'm gonna write that down. That's
there you go.
I've already written it down.
Sound of Blunder with a B.
Yeah.
That's great. That's an idea right there. That's a title.
Because reading is fundamental.
All right, everybody, you've been listening to Sunday Funnies.
Wasn't important.
Say what now?
Who said grade school wasn't important? Like, that's when I read that book. Right?
I love that book. Bradbury was very influential on me and his short stories. Just amazing. Amazing work. You've been listening to the Sunday Funnies for the 21st of January, or the 21st of January, the 10th of January, 2021. Ahead of myself.
Speaking of timelines.
Yeah. Speaking of timelines, we're ahead of ourselves. Now, anyway, let's go around the room here, introduce ourselves, and tell folks how that they can get a hold of us. We'll start with Glenn. Glenn.
Hi, I'm Glenn Fleming. I'm an artist, author, cartoonist, graphic designer. I'm also a publisher. I publish Comics Unlimited magazine, #4, which has just gone on sale. And you can reach me at comicsunlimitedmagazine@gmail.com.
And would you rather they get a hold of you there or to order your work?
Sorry. You can see me on Facebook and Twitter and stuff like that. Yep. But yeah, I'd rather you just email if you want to say anything. And I'll talk to you then if you want to do that.
Now, when they're looking for a copy of Comics Unlimited, is it best for them to get a hold of you?
No, it's best to go on Amazon for that. Just type in my name and the whole list will come up.
Trying to make you some money here, Glenn.
I know you are. And yes, I know you are. Thank you.
That's Glenn B. Fleming, Glenn with 2 N's. Go up there and take a look at Amazon. He's written a lot more than books on comics. There's a lot of different things available on Amazon under that author's name, Glenn B. Fleming.
Yeah, check it out.
Check it out. Yeah, but do get that Comics Unlimited magazine. That's really good.
#4's out today. We got Joe Sinnott interview with John Floyd, who's the inker, who goes over Barry Windsor Smith a lot, and Joe Sinnott. He was a good friend of his, and there's an article on that and lots of other stuff, Thunderbirds and all this kind of stuff. Just check it out. There's 4 issues out now.
Thunderbirds. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, Thunderbirds.
Daphne, go.
Well, if fantasy comics is your thing, you can go to egoworks.com, EGOWORKS.com, and talltalesonline.com, where you can read both my fantasy comics online for free. Ego Raven is a fantasy drama. Tall Tales is the more adventure type, running to Mount Doom type fantasy. So you get like 2 types of fantasies that you can read. You can also sign up for updates where you can also learn more about my Kickstarter, which is going on right now for Ego Raven, Heir of the First Unicorn, issue 1. And we just recently hit the $1,000 mark. So now we're trying to push it even further. So you can check it out there. Links are at the website. And if you're also into art tutorials, demos, and the occasional commentary video, you can also find me on YouTube at Daphne Lage, Lage Art.
Great. And folks, I've been your host, Randy Zimmerman. You can find me on Facebook under Randy Zimmerman. I'd tell you to find me under Twitter under Randy Zimm, but I'm actually thinking about getting off of that platform because it's just too negative and bitter. I'm hardly ever up there anyway.
I don't blame you.
You can get a hold of me at randyjzim@gmail.com. If you want to email me anything, I am a longtime alternative and independent comics creator and producer. I've done just about anything or everything in the direct market or in the comic market that you can imagine or that you can possibly do. I've been doing it for many, many years. And now we're doing this podcast. We're part of the Indie Volt Radio Network. We appreciate everybody out there in Indie Volt who are listening to us on indievoltradio.com that don't need to see us, that are out there listening. We love you and appreciate you all. We are available on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel myself called Zimm Geek, ZIMMGEEK, that I invite you to like and subscribe and hit the bell for notifications. I do have new content in the works that should be up hopefully within the next couple days or so. We are also on YouTube under Indie Volt. That's VOLT. That's INDIE Volt, VOLT, where we have all of our programming archived over there. The Sunday Funnies program has only been around for a few months now, probably 4 or 5 months. I'm not sure, but it's a blast to do. Normally we talk about the more lighter and whimsical side of comics, but we do tend to wander at times over different subjects. I have programs in the works covering underground comics and hopefully some funny animal comics coming up here soon. And our other programming, which you may want to listen to on Indie Volt at indievoltradio.com. indievolt.com, indievoltradio.com. Anyway, on Indie Volt Radio on Monday nights at 9 p.m., we have a great program by Eric Hodson and Michael Oden that talks about digital comics. It came from Webtoons, specifically the Webtoon app. Some fantastic strips there that very few people know even exist. On Tuesday night at 9 p.m., and all of these times are Eastern Standard Time, by the way, we do our Live Wire program, which is our standard Indie Volt broadcast. On Wednesday nights, the Indie Princess with co-host Daphne Lage
I'll be there this week.
And Meredith Logren do Geekgasm, which is comics and comics media from hopefully a more female perspective. It usually tends to be more adult than our other programs. Maybe a little bit more MADLSV than the other programming. That's on at 9 p.m. on Wednesdays. Then at 9 a.m. on Thursdays, Varian Grant and myself do the Breakfast Buzz, where we talk about the comics industry through the haze of waking up and having coffee. So, and at times Daphne is also joins us on that as well. That's at Thursday at 9 a.m. And then again at 9 a.m. on Sundays, just like today. We'll be back again next week with another episode of Sunday Funnies, where we talk about hopefully the more lighter and whimsical side that we've gotten into philosophy and stereotypes and all sorts of crazy subjects today. So
but it was all related.
deeply appreciate you listening. Going out the door, Matt D steps in, says, love this, about to be a regular listener. Matt, we deeply appreciate you. All of those times that I listed are Eastern Standard Times. Everything is archived over on the Indie Volt channel over on YouTube. Please go over there, like and subscribe. We do want to get to a point where we have 1,000 or more subscribers so that we can take on super chats, because the streaming bill for the online service is extensive, and Varian's been carrying that load by himself for way too long. Don't make us do a potathon, which we have talked about doing in the past, where we start begging for money. Do get over there with 1,000 subscribers. We can start taking super chats and worry about YouTube censoring our content, which we already have to worry about. But now we have to worry about doing that and getting money from them at the same time. So, everybody, we're going to go out the way we should have come in, and that's with our opening. We deeply appreciate you again. We wish you all the best of health and have a good rest of your day, no matter if it's the start or the end of it. Again, we appreciate our radio listeners. We appreciate everybody out there. Any last words from anybody?
We're good. Just buy Indie Comics.
Buy Indie Comics. Make sure you go up on Kickstarter and look at Daphne Lage's Ego Raven.
Yeah. But you can go to egoworks.com and all the links are there.
Yep. Go to Amazon and check out Glenn's works. He's got an awesome book on Easter Island I keep wanting to get a hold of. And other things. It's there. It's there. Comics Unlimited. You'll find it.
With a few other things as well. Children's books, all sorts of stuff.
All sorts of stuff. And he's going to have you're going to put a comic up there shortly, right? Hatch?
Yes. I'm going to put him up soon. He's the first run has virtually sold out, and it's not been on Amazon at all. So I thought I might put it up there as well.
Okay.
See what we can do with that. I'm hoping to produce an animated film of him as well.
Oh, sweet. That would be awesome.
So I think he lends himself to that kind of medium. I think it'd work really well, but just getting the time to do it now.
Yeah.
But I'm working on it. Yeah. Like everything else,
I'm hearing you.
I've got books to write. I'm writing 2 science fiction books as well. And then it's just.
I swear, Glenn, you're the only person that could say, "Oh, just write a book," and I couldn't argue with you. Because it's like, oh, you only got 37 of them, and you climbed the Himalayas while you're doing it. So it's like, what can I say? How can I argue with that?
I'll tell you this, Daphne. I like to do things at least twice. So I've got to go up the Himalayas again. So stand by for a new photograph.
There you go.
And all right. Next time I'll tell you when I landed the space shuttle.
I'm waiting for that.
Yeah, first civilian to do it. It was on a simulator. It wasn't a real one.
Until next time, everybody, take care and read some good comics.
Yeah, exactly.
See you soon.
about what you've accomplished.
Don't mess with the bull, young man.